Hello students. In last classes we discussed about the part 1 statistics for economics. In first PUC, as you know that there are two parts. One is statistics for economics, second one is Indian economic development. Okay, so in this part also it should be consist 10 chapters. So in statistics for economics also already I completed 3 chapters: introduction to statistics, collection of data, then organization of data. Okay, already I completed 3 chapters, okay, with notes. Now we are moving to another part, the second part of economics. In the first PUC you have to study, that is Indian economic development. Indian economic development. So it is also consists 10 chapters, but due to the COVID-19, government has reduced the syllabus. So in that, the first chapter and second chapter reduced by the government. That's why we are going to directly third chapter. That is, the third chapter name is Liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Okay, this is the third chapter, but as per the government rules, now this is the first chapter under the Indian economic development. It will come under the economic reforms. Economic reforms. So what is the meaning of economic reforms? What purpose we have to study about the economic reforms? Reforms is nothing but changes. Okay, reforms is nothing but changes. So this part completely related to the development of an economy, about especially our country, India's economic development or Indian economic development. That is only we have to study. We have to understand in this part. Okay, so this part completely related to the economic reforms. Economic reforms, the changes in the economy, development of an economy, development of an economy. Okay, in this chapter we have to discuss about meaning of liberalization, meaning of privatization, and meaning of globalization. So what is the meaning of this? Totally we can call like this: LPG, liberalization, privatization, globalization. Okay, so what purpose the government of India introduced this one? What is the meaning of this? What was the background? What was the situation? So everything we have to discuss in this chapter. Don't forget, this is another part of economics under the first PUC. Okay, you have to study 2 parts in first PUC. First one, statistics for economics. Second one is Indian economic development. Already in statistics for economics I completed, I explained, including notes, 3 chapters. Okay, last chapter was organization of data, before that collection of data, and before that introduction of statistics or introduction to statistics. Okay, now the second part of an economics, that is Indian economic development. Indian economic development, about study or collect information about Indian economy. So under this, the first chapter, liberalization, privatization, globalization. So especially since independence, like after 1947, since the independence, India adopted mixed economic system. Mixed economic system. Actually, each and every country each and every country should follow a system which helpful to the development of an economy. That is called only systems. Okay, so in the types of system there are 3. I think already you studied in the SSLC. Okay, so there are 3 economic system. One is centrally planned economy. Centrally planned economy. Centrally planned economy. Second one is capitalist economy. Third one is mixed economy. Okay, this centrally planned economy. So each and every country should follow a system. Under this only the country will develop. Especially in the central planned economy, completely the authority under the government. Okay, and in the capitalist economy, the rights, production, consumption, distribution, exchange, the economic activities, consumption, production, distribution, exchange completely under the private sector. In the mixed economy, both, it's a mixture of both, that is government and private sector. Here, whatever you want to take decisions to produce goods, like basic economic problems like what to produce, how to produce, whom to produce, what to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce. For this, if you take any decision that taken by the both under the mixed economic system. Actually, India is adopted the mixed economic system. Mixed economic system. India is adopted the mixed economic system. Not only central planned, not only capital. It is only adopting the mixed economic system. The centrally planned economy is completely belongs to the government. Otherwise, the government only takes decision under the central planned economy. And capitalist is also called as a socialist economy. Socialist economy. Okay, this is capitalist economy. Completely it belongs to private sector. That means private sector only takes decision about what to produce, how to produce, whom to produce. Okay, here mixed economy, both government also interfere in this market, and like in the economy, even private also interfere in the economy. Here the government and private both will take the decision to produce goods and services, and like how to produce, for whom to produce, how much price should be fixed. Everything decided by the both government and private sector. Especially the India has adopted which one? That is a mixed economic system. India adopted the mixed economic system. In the mixed economy, we can see coexistence of both, that is socialistic and capitalistic. Socialistic and capitalistic. So here the intervention of state in the economy, that is the state means government. The government here considered as a state. The government will interfere in the economy to decide like what to produce, how to produce, what price should be fixed. Even private sector also interferes in the economy to fix the prices. But the more importance are the decision taken by the completely authority under the government only. So government always, the government main aim is, that is providing service. Service, that is very important. It's always helpful to the poor people. Which one? The government always gives importance to the poor people. But private sector people always they want to get more profit. Their main aim is profit. The capitalist aim is, that is profit, but the government aim is providing service. Providing service, that is especially the central planned economy. The government will give importance to the poor people. So in this situation, at the time of 1980, you have to imagination already what happened at the time of 1980s. You have to understand. So when the government adopted mixed economy, in that situation, government only takes decision about the to produce goods and services, like how much to produce, for whom to produce. Okay, how much to distribute, like how much price fixed, everything decided by the government. In this situation, the completely restriction on private sector. The private sector completely faced the restriction. Especially, there was no rights to fix the price of which one for few goods to the private sector. So over these years, in this situation, there was a completely restriction on private sector. There was a completely restriction on private sector. So over the years, these rules and restrictions became very tough or hurdles in the process of growth and development. When the government implemented different types of restrictions or regulations on private sector, this happened It's a problem to the growth and development. Okay, in this situation, India has faced to economic crisis. In this situation, when the government only taking decision about the production of goods and services, distribution of goods and services, fixing the price, there was no rights to interfere in this. Which one? By the private sector. All the activities are controlled and managed by the completely government sector. Government people only fixed the price. Government only decided what to produce, whom to produce, where to produce, when to produce, how much to produce. Everything decided by the government. There was highly restriction on private sector. So at the time of 1980, there was a financial crisis. There was a financial crisis. There was a financial crisis. What was the crisis? What is the meaning of crisis? Crisis means problems. Especially here financial crisis, otherwise we can call like economic crisis. We can also call like economic crisis. Economic crisis. Okay, in this situation, the government expenditure exceeds its revenue. The government adopted mixed economic system. This means here both government and private sector both are playing role in the production of goods and services, but they were given much importance to government only. Government only taken the decision to produce goods and services, fix the price and how much to produce, how much to distribute, for whom to produce, everything decided by the government. There was a lot of restriction on private sector. Okay, so in this situation, the government of India, especially India, it was facing the problem of economic crisis or financial crisis at the time of 1980. So in this situation, the meaning of crisis means that was problems. That especially the government expenditure. What was the situation I am explaining? Government expenditure exceeds its revenue. Government expenditure exceeds its revenue at the time of 1980s. Expenditure exceeds its revenue. Okay. So what the government collected revenue. So like in the name of revenue, it has collected the tax. It has collected the tax. So what the government revenue, it was very less compared to the expenditure. That means the expenditure exceeds its revenue. The expenditure exceeds its revenue. And also the government not sufficient to provide basic facilities to the people. So it was there was no proper financial fund to provide goods and services, to produce goods and services, or to provide basic facilities. That means the government, especially it has forced to the government borrow from the public. Okay, this situation forced to the government borrow loans from public banks, financial institutions from international financial institutions. This situation forced to the government, what purpose? Borrow loans from the public like banks and financial institutions. Okay. On the other hand, the government had to spend its revenue to meet the basic necessities. Okay, basic necessities. And also, always the government tries to reduce the problems of unemployment, poverty, population explosion. That was population. Always the government tries to reduce the problem of this, that is unemployment, poverty, population. Okay, population explosion. These were biggest problems in the economy at the time of 1980, also even the present also. Okay. So what the government has collected money in the name of taxation, that was also not sufficient to provide basic facilities and not enough to remove the problems like this. So in this situation, the external borrowing was spent on meeting consumption needs. What the government taking loans from other countries, other institutions, other banks, that was also not sufficient to provide consumption things like consumption needs. And also at the time of 1980, the imports were high compared to the exports. Imports, what we are receiving from other countries to our country, that was also high compared to exports. That means exports were less and imports were more. So India, in this situation, there was no match to the growth and especially growth and development. What it has collected money, what it has collected revenue, that is not matched to the growth and development. Completely burden. It was a burden. The government had decided to loan from the international finance institutions, international financial institutions. That was India decided to approach to World Bank. India decided to approach to World Bank. That is called as IBRD. Okay. And also decided to approach IMF to face the situation when it was the expenditure exceeded revenue and it was not sufficient fund to face the problem like unemployment, poverty, population explosion, and also there was less amount to provide basic facilities like provide consumption needs. In this situation, government had decided to approach World Bank and International Monetary Fund, that is IMF, International Monetary Fund. World Bank decided to approach to these two banks or these two financial institutions. One is World Bank, also called as IBRD, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Another one is International Monetary Fund. International Monetary Fund. These institutions will provide loan facilities to the all countries. Okay, all countries. Those which are taken the membership in this. So for those countries or for that countries only, these financial institutions will provide loans. That's why even India also one of the member country of IMF and member country of IBRD. These both are always provided loans to the necessary countries in the world, especially not for all the countries. Those countries which are taken the membership in this, for them only these financial institutions will provide the loan to face the situation of financial crisis or economic crisis. At the time of 1980s, the government of India has decided to approach IBRD and IMF for the sake of loan to remove or to face the problem of financial crisis. So in this situation, when they approach to the IMF and IBRD means International Bank for Reconstruction and Development and IMF International Monetary Fund. So when they approached these banks, that time these banks decided to provide a loan. How much? That is $7 billion. Okay. $7 billion. Okay, $7 billion. They decided to provide loan to the government of India. So the World Bank, IBRD and IMF decided to provide loan. When the government of India approached, that time they decided to provide loan. That was how much? $7 billion. $7 billion. Okay. But to providing this, before giving this loan, they decided to put few conditions. Okay, for the sake of remove the financial crisis, for the sake of remove the economic crisis, the IMF and IBRD decided to provide loan. How much? $7 billion. When the government of India approached to these banks, what purpose? To control or to manage the financial crisis. They decided to ask loan to the World Bank and IMF. And World Bank and IMF decided to provide loan. How much? $7 billion. $7 billion as a loan to manage the financial crisis. To manage the financial crisis. Okay, in this situation, they put few conditions. What was that? That was India should be liberalize and open up the economy. Liberalize and open up the economy. Liberalize means that is you should remove the restrictions on private sector. Okay, should be removed on the restriction. Should be removed on the restriction, especially for private sector. Before it was completely restricted. There was no export, there was no import. Everything controlled by the government only. But the IBRD and IMF decided to provide loan. How much? $7 billion. But providing on the basis of few conditions. What was the condition? Should be open up of an economy. Should be open up of an economy and should be liberalize the economy. Liberalize means should be remove the restriction on private sector. Should be remove the restrictions on private sector. So these was the conditions. These were the conditions. What purpose? To provide loan. Who fixed this? That was World Bank and IMF. World Bank also called as IBRD, International Bank for Rural Reconstruction and Development. International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Another one is International Monetary Fund. Okay. So finally decided to provide loan. How much? $7 billion on few conditions. What were the conditions? That was the government of India should be open up of an economy and also should be remove the restriction on private sector. Should be remove the restrictions on private sector. Okay, this was the condition, and they decided to provide loan. How much? $7 billion. What purpose? To manage the economic crisis or financial crisis. Okay, up to this is enough. In next class, I will continue.